What's up everybody, I'm Valk here and welcome to my Overwatch 2 guide to crosshairs and reticles, how to set them and how to set them individually for each hero. So let's get into it. First of all, we're going to go to the menu, which is either pressing escape on PC or going into the bottom right hand corner and clicking menu. From here we're going to go on to options, and then across the top we're going to go to controls. The third category down is called reticle, and this is where we're going to start having a little play and going through the different types of crosshairs, what it all means, and being able to assign it to different heroes. As a very quick and short plug for myself, if you do enjoy Overwatch 2, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more guides, especially if you love Pharah. So now we're going to take a look at the different types of reticles that are available to us in Overwatch 2. So on the box on the right hand side it says default, you'll see a little drop down. If you click that, it will show the different types of reticles available. We've got default, circle, crosshairs, circle and crosshairs, and dot. We're going to run through each of these and show you how we can adjust them. And the next thing we're going to do is going to click the advanced box just underneath this. This opens up a ton of different parameters that we can change, and so we're going to run through each of the different types of reticles and show you how to adjust it to your liking. Alright, so the first one on the drop down is default. We're going to briefly touch on this because it's actually easier to show examples on the other reticles, but default is the default reticle that has been assigned to Overwatch 2 heroes. Some are more unique than others, notably Hanzo, which is why I used him in the example just before. His unique reticle is just for him, nobody else in the entire game can use it, and this is only available if you choose the default option. If you change this to dot or crosshair, for example, that unique style will then disappear. Now, I'm not going to go through the parameters on default because, as I said, it's easier to show you on the other ones. So we're going to dive in and take a look over on circle. Alright, so you can notice this looks a little different. On the left-hand side, you now have a preview. This is kind of what I was explaining was a bit easier to show than default. And on the right-hand side, you have all the different parameters. So for circle, we're going to start at the top, show accuracy. This has been renamed from Bloom, which was on Overwatch 1. Now what this means is you're able to see when the weapon that you're shooting starts to spread. So as the circle gets tighter around the dot in the middle, that means that your shots are more accurate. And as it expands, you'll notice that the bullets are spreading a little bit more. So that's what show accuracy means. It just gives you an indication kind of when to spray or when to stop and let it reset so your shots are going to be more accurate. Second down on the list, we have color. Pretty self-explanatory. You can just change the color of your crosshair to your liking. I personally like the green, so I'm going to stick with that. But, you know, feel free to put this at whatever preference that you want. Nice and easy. Next one down, we have thickness. This is the thickness of the crosshair or reticle. As you can see, as I'm increasing it, the thickness of the outside ring is increasing. Now, it's kind of separated here between the outside and then the dot, which is on the inside, which has its own set of parameters at the bottom. So crosshair length, the next one down, this doesn't apply to this because there isn't actually a crosshair here. So no, I'm going to leave that one for the next one. Center gap, this is the spacing between the dot in the center and the ring on the outside. So the thickness of the ring stays the same, but you can see it just increases or decreases the gap in the center, which is nice and easy. Opacity is, for this one, is the opacity of the ring on the outside as well. So naturally 0 would completely remove it, and you can change this to your liking. Outline opacity, there's a very, very slight, kind of like a very 0.5 stroke around the outside of the crosshair, and it's like a bit of a black line. As you change this, you can kind of see that it's decreasing the visibility of it and increasing, naturally that's what opacity does, but it helps you in situations where sometimes the crosshair might slightly disappear, so that's a good option. I normally have that on. Then we go down, dot size. This is the dot in the center. Changing this changes the size of the dot. I have always used a size 6 dot pretty much from the beginning of Overwatch. In my Pharah, I just use a dot and I use a size 6 dot. Very simple, very easy. And then dot opacity. Do you want to see the dot or do you not want to see the dot? Nice and simple. So the bottom option is actually brand new to Overwatch 2. It's called scale with resolution. It has 2 options, on or off. What this means is if you increase your resolution or decrease your resolution, your crosshair will scale with that size so that you don't end up with a massive screen or with a tiny crosshair because your parameters have been set to be whatever size it's supposed to be. This is nice because it makes it feel like the crosshair is always very natural to the size of screen or resolution that you're playing with, and I think it's a really good addition. So that pretty much wraps up the overview for circle. We're going to take a look at the next reticle on the drop down, which is going to be crosshairs. So all of the parameters say exactly the same, except some of them now affect this crosshair directly. So I would say turn show accuracy on. We know exactly what it does now with the increase of spread and decrease. So when you're more accurate and when you're least accurate. But just make sure to check it out so you're familiar with it. Next one down, we've got color, of course. Choose the color of your choosing. We're going to change this because why not? It's the video. Thickness. pretty much the same. So this is the thickness of the lines, doesn't affect the dot. The dot is still independent, but as you see, moving this up and down changes the thickness. And then crosshair length is the actual length of the crosshairs. You see, you can have some super long boy crosshairs there. And center gap is the same as how far away from the central dot are the crosshairs lying. So you can have kind of further out, or I kind of like them quite tight. So I'll probably use something similar to this, maybe a little less thick, something like that. Opacity the same. Do you want to see the outside of the crosshairs, or do you want them to be slightly there? Outline opacity is the same as well, where you have a slight, just a very slight, maybe if I increase this and the thickness, you'll be able to see this a little bit better. The outline opacity, as I drop that down, depending on the color of your crosshair, if you have, for example, a blue crosshair and you're pointing it at the sky, having this outline opacity just allows you to see your crosshair just a little bit better, so it's quite nice. Dot opacity, dot size, the same, increases or decreases the size of the dot. Or if you don't want to have a dot with this at all, you can completely remove it using the dot opacity and then change all the other different settings to find your perfect crosshair length and size. Moving on from crosshairs, the next one on the drop down is called circle and crosshairs. This is kind of like, if you don't really know what kind of reticle that you want, you can have it all. You can have the crosshair lines, the circle, and the dot in the middle. By now we're familiar with all of the different options that we have, so thickness increases the thickness, so on, so on. They're pretty much exactly the same, so play around with this to find out what style that you like and what works for you. We're going to move on to the next one. Very self-explanatory. Dot is just an individual dot. I always use a size 6 dot here in my green, so let me set my preferences. You can also do dot opacity, but these are the only two that you can change at the bottom here that will affect this one. I just wanted to quickly touch back on to default again. Now we've seen what all of the attributes do with a visual example. What happens here is as you change any of these, any of the heroes that have a default assigned reticle with that element, so for example, if one of the heroes or 3 of the heroes include a dot, by changing dot size, it will then change it for all of those heroes with their default reticle to the whatever size dot you put here, or the dot opacity, or crosshair length, for example, if any of the heroes have crosshairs. It's just like a nice kind of one size fits all to change them, but that's not cool when you want to change it individually per hero. So now we're going to get into the fun, juicy part of how do we change the reticles for each of the heroes individually. Or let's say you have a McCree that you want a crosshair, but you also have a Pharah that you just want a dot. Now, to do this, we move to the right-hand side. Over here, you have the change hero box. We're going to click that and it brings up all of the heroes that are in the game. Now, the cool thing to note here is if a hero has been changed already individually, you'll notice that in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a little star symbol. This means that that hero has an override, and the override overrides any of the default stuff, meaning that any changes you make will just apply to that one single hero. So let's go and take a look at one. We'll go to one that hasn't already had something on there. So we'll go to Soldier, for example. He hasn't got a star. He's using the default settings. So we're going to click him, and now you can see the Soldier's portrait. This means that we're going to be editing anything directly for Soldier. This is anything on this page actually, but we're just going to focus in on the reticle. So we'll drop this down. Let's say, I don't really want to use Soldier's default reticle. I want to use a crosshair. So go on to crosshairs. Right now, this is what the default setting is, but as I change any of these attributes, what you'll notice is a little star will then appear to the side of that attribute. This means that this is overriding the default, and it's going to be using this for this one particular hero. So in this instance, anything we change will be for Soldier 76. Now, you can, if you want to override it back to default, click delete override, but just keep in mind that that isn't just for the reticle. That will change anything that you've changed on this entire page, including mouse sensitivity or any keybinds or anything in particular that you have for Soldier. So if you do want to change it back without deleting everything, what you can do is you can just scrub the bars up and down until that star disappears, and that will mean it's back to default. It would be nice if there was like a quality of life, like a double click or something, but right now this is the way you have to do it if you don't want to completely override everything for that hero. There's a nice little tip. And that's it. That's how you change a reticle for an individual hero. If you want to go back to changing it for all the heroes that don't have any overrides, all you have to do is change hero, and then at the bottom left hand side there is another button called all heroes, and then you're back to changing everybody who doesn't have an override. And remember, the overrides are the little stars on the heroes here. And that's it. Thank you for tuning into another Overwatch 2 guide. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure to do so. And I hope that this guide helps you find your perfect reticle or crosshair, and that it's been helpful for you. Make sure to throw a thumbs up if it has been, and look forward to seeing you on my next video.